Good morning. I do want to take a quick second and acknowledge the death of Jimmy Buffett this last week. I'm not going to play any of his stuff because it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's really a voice of a generation, but he's another one of those wonderful people where his music doesn't make sense without the lyrics. So.
Welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist. I'm Reverend Matthew, and I am deeply proud and always humbled to serve you as your minister. A welcome to all of those who are watching a recorded version of this posted online sometime for now. And a welcome to those of you live streaming us from home at this moment. Please, if you would, turn on your cameras so that we can see you. As you do, we'll continue our welcome to those of you who are here on our campus listening as you prepare for our congregation this morning. And of course, a welcome to you all who are here in the sanctuary. Let's greet one another by waving and by shouting on three, Happy Labor Day. All ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy Labor Day.
Thank you very much. Amanda Udis Kessler, who crafts queer sacred music for, quote, justice-seeking Christians and Unitarian Universalist congregations, invites us to share in a reading entitled Labor in Love. I'll read the top left of what's on our screens, and as you feel called, you read the bottom right in italics. On Labor Day, we honor our work, physical and mental, paid and unpaid, joyous and heartbreaking.
We give thanks for the work's gifts, sufferings and difficulties, and strive to make labor just and
Our work can build our society, provide for our material needs, and give our life meaning. Our work can damage our society and planet, fail to sustain our material needs, and can be meaningless. Our work can heal the world, help us understand who we are, and keep us safe. Our work can harm the world, demean us, and expose us to danger. Our work can fill our days with accomplishments and our lives with stories. Our work can dissatisfy and alienate us. We may not be able to find enough work or any work. This Labor Day and all Labor Days to come, serving here at Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist with their time and talent is a love labor for many. Daily, weekly, monthly, annually through the decades, your love labor has created and continues to craft this congregation. We see it clearly on Sundays in our welcomers, in those leading our hospitality, those behind the scenes teaching our children, and through our audiovisual team. My thanks to all of you who give their love labor this day and over the years. Leading our service with me today is our music director, Chris Tackett, and our song leader, Joel Yellen. Robin Bousel had planned to be a part of our service this morning, but she is taking some time to rest before returning to her co-leadership of our pastoral associates team. She reminds us all that love labor and love rest go hand in hand. So thank you, Robin, for your leadership. We have gathered. It is good. Let us worship together. Our chalice lighting is by the Reverend Florence Kaplow, a UU minister and an ordained Buddhist priest. And she tells us, in recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, including the work of our hands and backs, in gratitude for all the labors that support our world, for all those who boldly continue to the work of justice, equity, and compassion. Our first song together this morning is Here We Come Marching, Marching. And as Joel sets up to lead us, Chris, do you have something you would want to prompt us with here?
I just love this text. It's from 1911, James Oppenheim, and this setting of it is from 1917. It comes out of both the suffragette movement and a lot of the early labor unrest in the early part of the 20th century. And you'll see in the text here in a moment that it is good that we labor for a fair wage. It is right that we are paid appropriately for the work we do. But we don't just need bread, we also need the beauty of life. We need roses too. So please stand with us and join us in singing. It's number 109 in the hymnal. Anybody who has a hymnal handy, and please sing.
This is a protest song. Feel free to put a little grit in it. As we come closes, for the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we come marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, unmother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing their ancient song of bread. Small arms and love and beauty, their drudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread, bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we bring the greater days, the rising of the women is the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler, tend the toil where one reposes, but the sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
It's just one of the many things I love. The power of text, the power of music, and the power when you put them together. I love music. It's been in my life. I've known from a all too early age that I wanted to be in music. But I also determined fairly early on that I didn't want a solo career. I didn't want to be the pianist on stage. There's a number of reasons for that. Among them, the fact that I don't want to spend that kind of time alone in a practice room. Because to be a really fine concert soloist of that sort requires a lot of work. And for all of my giant introvert tendencies, I really do love people. And I love having people around. And for me, the essence of music is people working together. Oftentimes, we sing together. In some cases, it's because we don't know what else to do. We passed, as some of you know, the 60th anniversary of Dr. King and the famous rally in Washington, D.C., where he delivered perhaps the most famous telling of his I Have a Dream speech. Before he spoke, though, one of the rabbis who had worked with him also spoke. And he spoke quite eloquently of the need for us all to work together. And as I was watching that film clip a couple days ago, I was also thinking, there are times when we don't know what to do. There are times when we aren't sure what we can do. And at those moments, those are the perfect times when you're not sure what else to do. Sing together. To me, the essence of music is people singing, playing, working together. To that end, y'all are going to be the anthem this morning. Just as a little taste, didn't make it in the newsletter this week. I'll try and get it in next week. We are starting choir this Wednesday at 6:30 right here, 6:30 to about 7:30. I will respect your time and try and get you out as close to end time as possible. 6:30 to 7:30 next Wednesday right here. But now we're going to take a quick second and learn something. So if you would please put that photo up, that slide up. This is also 1072 in our teal book. So just give a listen. Evening breeze, spirit song sings to me when the day is done. Sing with me and evening breeze, spirit song sings to me when the day is done. Let me play the next part. Let me play the next part. You're just like the choir. I love it. Listen. You can't listen while you're also singing. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the, let's say, land, not sea, since we're nowhere near the sea. So now we sing that second phrase. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the land. And if you say sea, it's not a big deal. Oh well, that's perfectly fine. Let's sing the whole thing together. Evening breeze, spirit song sings to me when the day is done. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea land. Evening breeze, spirit song sings to me when the day is done. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the land. Or this land, that works too. So let's start over here. I started with you guys last time, didn't I? Let's start over here. It's a round, so we're going to start here, and we're going to sing here, and you'll join two measures later, and we will sing the whole thing twice through. And I will make my usual joke, this would have been so much easier if you'd just come to choir on Wednesday. So, to the west. Spearing breeze, spirit song. Your turn. Evening breeze, spirit. Once more, and. I'll see you all Wednesday evening, 6:30. I've got a lot of fun stuff planned, simple folky stuff like this. I've got some beautiful choral music planned for this year. I have all kinds of wonderful things. COVID permitting, of course. We're going to be very careful and watching on that as well, too, on that front as well. Please, I look forward to seeing you all Wednesday evening.
The Zen koan is a Buddhist teaching tool. It's often used to surprise an individual into enlightenment. If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around, does it make a sound? And they might seem a little silly, or even quickly answerable, as we're about to learn.
And clapping. Piece of cake. No, Bart, it's a 3,000-year-old riddle with no answer. It's supposed to clear your mind of conscious thought. No answer? Lisa, listen up.
What is the sound of one hand clapping? Lisa is right, as she usually is. A Zen koan is an invitation to clear your mind of conscious thought and awaken into deeper meaning. It's to invite a listener beyond thinking into living into this moment, sometimes with a silent and sudden realization. In this spirit of Zen, I invite you to a time of meditation, of breath, and centering around this question. What is the sound of desert equity? You hear the equity in the flashing boom of the monsoons, in the rushing of the wind in the trees, in the rapid hammering of rain, drowning out all other noise. And you hear equity in the repeating call of the morning dove, in the droning of the cicadas, in the stillness echoing in canyons. Can you hear equity in the lightness of sunbeams, in the weight of humid heat, in the silence of dust? There is equity here. If you reach into your memory with your senses and your experiences, do you hear it? Among the wholeness of sounds and sights and smells and touches, even tastes, do you feel it? Because it's there. The seeming opposites of wet, dry, and hot, cold, prickly, smooth, rough, soft, harsh, comforting. There's a natural wholeness, and it meets the needs of each and of all. Binary either or thinking simply cannot take us far in our attempts to more deeply understand the essence of desert life, says Gary Nabhan, ecologist and Catholic priest. Our Sonoran desert is non-dualistic. It cannot be defined by the binary. It cannot be fenced in or fenced off, so don't try. Instead, welcome your place in its grand wholeness. Move with seasons and cycles. Shift with flora and fauna. Engage in its life and death, and listen. Do you hear it? Do you hear it? Do you hear it? May you and I, may we be so bold to live by all that we hear. The last day of June in 1982 was hot. But this story takes place in Tucson, so of course it was hot. But I recall it specifically, the bright quality of midday sunshine. You know how sometimes just the quality of light brings back memories? And the dry heat on my skin and hair, I did have some then. As I walked down the street from my house to a park that was just a few blocks away. And I recall it so exactly because I was deeply troubled. I was bothered by something other than the Sonoran heat. You see, June 30th, 1982 was the final deadline for ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. I was only 9 at the time. Straight, blonde, bleach blonde hair. But my understanding of history, the long history of the ERA, was limited. I didn't know that the ERA was introduced in 1923 to remove the distinctions based on gender in employment, property, and several other legal matters. I just knew that it had not been ratified once again. I didn't understand the complex process of ratification, that the US Senate and House had already passed it, but it took 38 states by that day in June to make a constitutional amendment. My knowledge of the political process had really began and ended with Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Yeah, didn't quite cover amendments to the Constitution. What I did know, and I deeply felt, was that the women in my life were denied equality. And that made me feel hotter than the temperature of that day. I couldn't comprehend how all the women I knew, my mom and my Aunt Joan and my grandmother, my teacher, Mrs. Jones and Miss Carrasco and Miss McDonald, or even the religious professionals of my Methodist church, Cynthia Langston Kirk or Joyce Thornton, were not considered equal in my country. It didn't make sense to me that these women that I had learned from and been cared by for, and who had cared for me, that I respected and loved, were unequal to men under the law. And it made me angry. I guess it still does. And the image that flashed over and over in my 9-year-old mind was something I had learned in school, similar to this one by Rebecca Unami Halsam. While some enjoy the parade, others are denied. I didn't know at the time that this image, with all of its best intentions, subtly perpetuates inequality. As Halsam critiques it, if you'd go back one, thank you. The person on the far right, in yellow, who represents individuals of historically marginalized groups, they can't see over the fence because they are metaphorically shorter. And this suggests an inherent deficit lies within that individual. You see, they can't see over because there's something wrong with them. I was taught this. I took this as reality. I was only later to unlearn it, to come to know that the issue was not what's inherent in individuals who could not see over the fence, but rather this image, that the ground underneath them was uneven. See, in this version, all the people are just about the same size. The individual on that right, they cannot enjoy the parade because they are in a systemic hole. It's not something inherent characteristic of a gender or ethnic background or heritage or age or ability. What keeps them from participating is that the ground under their feet is uneven. Or to put it more personally, the women that I knew were not considered equal, not because something was inherently wrong with them. There was something wrong with the system. It was the system that our founders of our country created that put women in a hole. And that reality had never really changed. Howard Zinn, historian and activist whose A People's History of the United States continues to awaken and inspire me, writes, in the Constitution of the United States, there is a list of political rights in the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. But the Constitution says nothing about economic rights. There is no legal right to food or housing or health care or education. When written, our Constitution promised inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but only for a few: white, male, landowners. Founding mother Abigail Adams, whose religion only a short time after her life would evolve into Unitarianism, wrote at the time, "I am more and more convinced that man is a dangerous creature and that power vested in many or few is ever grasping, like the grave, crying, 'Give, give.'" And I genuinely wonder what she would think of a systems of power in America today, 100 years after the Equal Rights Amendment was introduced and has yet to be passed. Not that I would be the one who would want to tell her. You see, she also wrote, "If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." And it took me a long time to learn, to unlearn and then relearn that equality is not the goal. Next slide, please. See, when the problem isn't intrinsic to human beings, but arises out of historic dehumanization, discrimination, and marginalization, then establishing equality doesn't do very much. Treating one another as equal, well, it's always the right thing to do. But expecting that interpersonal relationship to change what individuals experience in their lives on a daily, weekly, monthly, lifelong basis that's based on long established systems, well, that's foolish. And during my path of unlearning and relearning, there were many times I was foolish. And in response, there were quite a few rebellions fomented on me. Lovingly fomented on me, meant to bring me to an awareness and an enlightenment. And it was because of this rebellious love that I learned that when the system is the cause of inequality, it is equity that is required. The next slide, please. When the foundation is uneven, then each must receive what they need in order to enjoy the parade. You may already know this, but give me a minute or two. Our current Unitarian Universalism began at the exact same time and in the same spaces and by many of the same people as our United States. Now, rather than being moral rationalists that the founding fathers were, our religious fathers, and that is the accurate designation, were puritanical predestinationists. That is, they believed that each person, before they were born, it was determined whether they would go to heaven or to hell. Talk about starting on uneven ground. Now, thankfully, our faith evolved. And the first movement in that evolution came as those Puritans adopted the covenant, which was their means to relate to one another. The Cambridge Platform, which was written in 1648, is paraphrased this way by the Reverend Forrest Church. We pledge to walk together in the ways of truth and affection, as best we know how them now, or may learn them in the days to come, that we and our children may be fulfilled, and that we may speak to the world in words and through actions of peace and goodwill. Now, this 1648 early covenant really only regarded white male landowners. But because of it, the faith began to evolve, how they walked together within their communities. You see, without knowing who was or who wasn't going to heaven or hell, they started to treat one another more equitably. And in the ensuing centuries, as our faith evolved, covenant emerged, and doctrines like predestination were left behind. Our theological ancestors in the line of Abigail Adams became suffragists and then feminists and womanists. Our religious forebears were among the earliest abolitionists seeking to end slavery and then struggling for black civil rights to the point of being murdered for their work, like the Reverend James Reeb or Viola Luiso. Early on in our faith, certainly, they believed that equality was the goal. It was for white male landowners, treating white male landowners equally. But through their loving revolutions, our faith began to unlearn and relearn anew. Treating each other equally in our personal relationships today is a valued part of our covenants. But we have come to know that equality does not change the uneven ground of our world. Today, we dedicate ourselves to equity, to walking together, not in front, not behind, but alongside one another, coming to see the dignity of each and seeking justice for all. It's through the love and patience of binary and non-binary, queer Unitarian Universalists that I've come to learn that women do not need my help to clamber up over a fence to enjoy the parade beyond. They need my help dismantling the fence altogether. The next slide, please. Again, Howard Zinn. When workers discovered they could not depend on the Constitution, on the government, on the courts, they did what people do to make democracy come alive. They organized and used direct action, strikes and boycotts, picket lines, demonstrations to get the 8-hour day, reasonable wages, safe work rules, and at least the bare minimum for a decent life. On uneven ground, they staged a revolution against the system. The labor movement that we celebrate this very holiday weekend took on the fences and the walls. They took on all of the barriers to their having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Zinn notes that the industrial workers of the world was a radical labor organization of the earliest 20th century. They organized all workers, black, white, men, women, native-born, foreign, skilled, unskilled, toward a revolutionary goal: to take over the industrial system and run it for the benefit of the people. It was more than just removing systemic power from hands of white male land industry owners. Their goal was to share power with everyone. And this is liberation. our final slide. This is the goal. You see, when you start down the road of equity, you can't stop when one individual or one group gets to perceive the parade. Equity means that everyone shares in having what they need, so they have the freedom to decide to join the parade or not. And that means we have to change the systems. You cannot stop because the system has just been that way. It's how things are. We have to unlearn and relearn what is real. And it's slow going. I'm sorry, but it's slow going. If we look at our evolution of our faith over the last 400 years, you can see it is terribly slow going. But seeking equity leads to a radical and revolutionary spirit that can and does change the many systems of oppression. Helps us to create even ground. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't come to me after the service and say, Reverend Matthew, you're saying we shouldn't treat people equally. Because I'm not saying that. Of course, we should treat one another equally. It's vital in our direct relationships and our interactions, but that reality frees no one. It's just the right thing to do. It takes a love labor of many, many people in a revolution of mind and heart and body and spirit to bring about the liberation of us all. And that's liberation that cannot be fenced off or holed up or buried. It's liberation as a wholeness that meets the needs of each and of all. This liberation may sound like a foolish dream if your daily, weekly, monthly, lifelong existence is dehumanizing, it's discriminating, and it's marginalized. If you're down in a hole, while others are up enjoying the parade, it may seem like a dream. And yet we know by so many who have come before that liberation is real. We've witnessed it in the revolutionary words, in the revolutionary lives, in the revolutionary deaths of so many just like us. And as Unitarian Universalists, we believe that equity is our labor. It's our mind's focus. It's our heart's yearning. It's our spirit's revolution. It's alive among us, and it is here in this place that we live, this Sonoran desert. It's there we witness it beyond the hot and cold, the dry and the wet, the prickly and the soft, the abundance of life and the eventuality of death. We know it. Can you hear it? Can you hear it in this faith? Can you hear it in yourself? May we be so bold to live into this liberation by our ongoing labor of love. Amen. Our closing hymn is Do You Hear? Number 112 in our gray hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join your voices together.
stand, through the sky, through the land. Do you hear, in the heights, on the plain, in the vale, on the main, in the sun, in the rain? Do you hear, through the roar, through the rush, through the throng, through the crush? Do you hear in the hush of your soul, of your soul? Hear the cry, fear won't still. Hear the heart's call to will. Hear a sigh, startling thrill in your soul, in your soul. From the place where you stand to the outermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear all the dreams, all the dares, all the sighs, all the prayers? They are Moore's, mine and theirs. Do you hear, do you hear?
As we close, I keep turning it off. I apologize. As we close, we have quite a few announcements. It's a show that as we begin to move further into the fall, our congregation's activities are ramping up. So please pay attention, listen to what you might be interested in, and know that you can't do everything that we're offering. As you leave here, you will notice our wooden bowl and our woven basket. The wooden bowl, of course, is for your financial support of Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist, anything that you give that supports our programs, our building, our staff. But in the woven basket, each month we take up a collection for a different organization, giving all of them that you offer there. This month, we are working with a partner, Interfaith Community Services. They offer food and rides and elder care. They offer job assistance and emergency financial services to the Tucson community and have done for many years now. There are over 120 congregations who are members as we are. This interfaith community both supports and is supported by ICS. For example, if a member of Mountain Vista or a staff person or our minister is in need, ICS has a very direct means to hear us and to respond. It's a unique relationship that goes along with all of the work they do in our community. Any of your gifts to our woven or our wooden bowls, they are gratefully received. Pride Fest is coming up. On the weekend of September 29th to October 1st, there are many activities going on at that time. One of them will be a parade on the Friday evening. Next day, we will have a table at Pride Fest at Reed Park with the Baja Four, and we'll be highlighting our OWL program. And then on Sunday, October 1st, there's an interfaith gathering at the Tucson Holocaust Museum that will be invited to either attend or watch via live stream as we interfaith Tucsonans and people of the area celebrate Pride with joy. Please hold that space on your calendar. Next, OWL, Our Whole Lives, is our sex and sexuality program. It's something that is actually pretty unique to Unitarian Universalists and our partners in the United Church of Christ. In fact, what I've learned recently in an interfaith setting is it's where other clergy leaders of other denominations send their kids and their families. We currently have a new class just about to begin whose registration closes tomorrow. So if you have a 9 to 12-year-old in mind, please quickly get them registered as we are trying to make some choices about how we proceed with this particular class. Next. Dungeons and Dragons for young adults. Yeah, Mark, I'm talking to you. We are going to look for a party of young adults, 18 to 35 years, to play Dungeons and Dragons online. Sasha, well, we'll talk. Sasha will be leading a game and then instructing others on how to lead it, because afterwards they're going to open it up to others. So if you know anyone who fits in this age group, or you yourself do, and you're curious about playing Dungeons and Dragons, learning how to lead Dungeons and Dragons, and would be willing to come back and to do at least one session with people of all ages here at Mountain Vista, please talk with me. Next. Learn Tarot with Alice Vath. Alice Vath is a local leader in the There's Another Way to Know About Yourself movement. She has long been organizing many different people locally. Well, she's going to be coming here on a Sunday in September in the afternoon, and then again in October with her introduction to tarot. So if you're curious or you're a lifelong practitioner, please come and join. Because after those, she's going to help us begin to organize small, yes, Summer, I'm talking to you. I can see all of you perk up when I'm talking about these things. A small group ministry. She won't be leading it, but she'll be meeting with people that first small group ministry meeting and talking to you about how tarot can actually begin to engage you intimately and ultimately together as Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalists. If you're interested, just keep your eyes and ears open. Finally, I'm getting to the end of them, the 7 altars. Engaging the theme of equity this month, we are crafting 7 altars representing various beliefs and faiths among our friends and members at Mountain Vista. Dispersed inside and outside of our church, these altars are your opportunities to learn more about the faith language and the heritage of our members and friends. You can discover many different meanings of what an altar is, and you might be curious to create one in the future. You see pictured here 5 of the 7. The children are making one this morning, and next week, outdoors, Warren and Hannah will be constructing the 7th, so you'll have to come and find out what that is next Sunday. These will stay up until probably about mid-September, late October, and then we're going to switch them all to Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, and Hallowtide altars. All 7 of them will change over one weekend. After that, for a few more weeks, we'll change them all again to reflect the winter holidays. They're not going to stay in any one place. They're not going to necessarily all be indoors or outdoors. And I'm not telling you where they're at. This is another way for us to begin to not only engage one another, but engage this, our spiritual home. So there are 5 ready to go right at this moment, 6 if the children are finished with theirs, and next week is number 7. Stay tuned for much, much more.
Actually, though, too, I wanted to make sure, because I don't know if they've heard it yet, but choir starts this week. Yeah, I know. Surprise, surprise.
We release our flame, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with these words that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said during the eulogy for Reverend James Reeb. So in his death, James Reeb says something to each of us, black and white alike. Says that we must substitute courage for caution. Says to us that we must be concerned not merely about those who murdered him, but about the system, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murder. His death says to us that we must work passionately, unrelentingly, to make the American dream a reality, so he did not die in vain. We extinguish the flame and yet carry in our hearts courage to relate to one another equally, to engage our world with the passionate work of equity as we seek to realize together an unrelenting liberation for us all.